Coming to you from Gangnam in Seoul, South Korea. Earlier today I was watching a video posted by Tom Billieu on his Impact Theory program on YouTube. And the visitor that was being interviewed mentioned that loneliness can be as toxic as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And it made me think a little bit about the struggles that expats go through, particularly with loneliness when they relocate to another country. I've relocated 4 times. I've moved twice to Canada and I've moved twice to South Korea. And I recall that on my first time moving to Canada, I was married at the time, and yet at the same time I felt so incredibly lonely. And then I recall that on the first time that I moved to South Korea, I had a really strong base of friends around me, and they were my fellow colleagues or workers, and we frequently met up and hung out, and I really bonded with them. And it only took, I would say, about 6 months for me to actually feel like I had a proper friendship base once I was there. And it was funny because just as I was leaving, it felt like, now that I've settled down and I've actually got a support network, now it's time to go. But on the second time that I moved to South Korea, I was kind of expecting a similar situation. I was kind of expecting that I would end up having a support network in the form of my colleagues that I would be working with. But I was mistaken about that, and I found myself feeling very vulnerable when I was trying to Skype with my family back home in the UK, and I was trying to stay in contact with my friends in Canada a lot, who'd been my friends for a long time. But inevitably, I think that retaining long distance relationships can be really, really challenging in the form of, text messaging and Skyping and things like that. And it really doesn't substitute real life interactions. And I think that at that particular time, when I moved to Korea for the second time, I was particularly vulnerable, and I fell into a situation where I was taken advantage of by somebody really manipulative, and I hadn't anticipated that. Or I should rephrase that: I allowed myself to fall into that situation and become or be taken advantage of by somebody that was quite unscrupulous, and somebody that I really didn't expect that to actually come from. And so, reflecting on loneliness and the challenge of moving abroad, like despite seeking adventure and wanting something exciting and challenging for your life, and doing that by taking a job, moving abroad and becoming an expat. The thing is that nevertheless, the challenge of loneliness is very, very real, and it doesn't matter, what age you are. It doesn't matter, how smart you are. There are a few things that I would like to mention, and that is that what I've noticed is that a lot of expats like to rush to make new friendships, particularly new romantic relationships. And I've noticed that things like dating apps are particularly popular. Like when the second time I moved to Korea, one of the girls said to me, why don't you download this app and meet guys and this and that and the other. I was single at the time, and I really didn't want to do that, but she used it frequently, and I thought to myself, I don't really want to meet people in that kind of way. And I think that is really a symptom of a bigger problem, and that is that when we feel lonely, that we oftentimes turn to social media to try and feel fill that loneliness void. And I think that that's a mistake that we're making, that, you know, that we turn to Facebook or we turn to Instagram to see how many likes we have, or we start, you know, using dating apps or whatever, just for the sake of building intimacy or building some sort of foundation, or some kind of, you know, what we think will be sustainable, we might think will be sustainable friendship or a real sense of caring. But the thing is that a lot of these are fickle, you know. A lot of people end up, you know, ghosting people or being ghosted. And I think that it's just such a fickle world that really it's a lot of it, in my opinion, is a waste of time. And it also uses up a lot of your emotional kind of strength. And I think that alternately, one thing that I've been doing for the last year is that I've been going to a Spanish language meetup group. I found something that I like doing, and that is, you know, speaking Spanish and meeting with people for, you know, a particular group of people. A lot of the members are new, and, you know, people come and go, but there is a solid crew of people that tend to come every week, and that those have become my solid friends. And I think that, you know, finding a group of people with similar interests, like a hiking group, for example, or a Spanish language group or whatever, that is a key to surviving as an expat living abroad. Is, you know, forget about all of the, you know, the apps, the dating apps, and, you know, these surface level ways to find some kind of security or feel validation. You know, when you walk away from your friends and family, you know, back home, you suddenly realize that in a way you can just walk out of people's lives and you actually haven't impacted it that much. And sometimes that can leave you feeling really vulnerable, like, you know, oh, so, you know, it doesn't actually matter if I'm, you know, away from people that, you know, I had cared about so much. You know, you suddenly develop this relationship whereby you have to do it long distance, and you have to adapt. And that's something that I've had to do ever since I moved to Canada, which was, you know, a long time ago now. That's more than 15 years ago. And anyway, I just wanted to share that with you guys, that being an expat abroad is not necessarily really easy in that particular respect, and that what I've found, one of the best ways to avoid loneliness is to meet people in real life groups, particularly a solid group of people that repeatedly meet up and that you can build more long-term bonds with, rather than apps that are just, you know, of people that are just going to drip in and drip out of your life just like that. Another thing that I want to point out very, very briefly is the idea of learning to love yourself, and that's something that I'm going to record a video about tomorrow. Essentially, self-love and learning to do things that you enjoy doing, and learning to appreciate yourself, and learning to take care of yourself emotionally without feeling that somebody else needs to fill that void within you, is incredibly important if you choose to live abroad, because you're opting to essentially put yourself in situations where you are going to be alone, and whether or not you're going to be lonely is sometimes a choice, actually. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for watching.